Why is it that thousands of people agreed to follow a half-naked fakir for hundreds of kilometers in his quest to make just a fistful of salt? We are talking about Mahatma Gandhi. Why did people do it? What was his capital? Clearly, it was not finance capital. He did not invest money in trucks and lorries and tractors to ferry these people around, or pay $50 or $100 to each person who came there, as we see in rallies and dharnas of today. People came out of their own volition. So what was his capital? The secret, invisible, magical ingredient that allows you to win over people and influence them is your social capital. And the importance of social capital cannot be understated, especially in today's world, in the context of life in general, enterprise, business, and more importantly, leadership. So welcome to another episode of Careertainment, and today we will talk about social capital and how to acquire it and grow it. Thank you for sharing, subscribing, and liking the channel. Continue doing that. It encourages me. Now, frankly, social capital has been around for some time. We all experience it on a day-to-day basis. You know that neighborhood grocery store whom you know, or the taxi guy whom you know and who allows you to walk away without paying because you forgot your wallet at home, are small examples, day-to-day examples of experiencing social capital over finance capital. So how does one acquire social capital? Before we get into acquisition of social capital and growing it, it's important that the concept of social capital is understood clearly, or moreover, it is understood clearly in the context of finance capital, because that's where the misunderstanding occurs and we lose the plot. This misunderstanding happens because of that small word capital. We often use this word, or rather regularly we use this word capital in the context and paradigm of business in terms of money, finance. And that's what leads us, or rather misleads us, in looking at social capital also in the paradigm of finance capital. But these two are different and distinct, and once this is understood and the misunderstanding is removed, then it's easier to fathom the importance of social capital in your life, and the acquisition happens automatically. Let's look at a few ways to contrast social capital from finance capital. For one, finance capital is very unidimensional. You talk about finance capital only in the context of money and nothing else. Contrast that with social capital. Social capital is multidimensional. You can talk about social capital in terms of values, behavior, verbal communication, non-verbal communication, intellect, so on and so forth. There's a list which is huge. But the reason we are not able to understand this huge list or even look at this huge list is because we are used to looking at capital in the narrow context of finance capital. And therefore, we cannot fathom the vastness and the potential of social capital. That's one. Number two, finance capital accumulates by saving. So you deploy funds and you make money and you keep something aside. That's how your capital accumulates, or finance capital accumulates. But when it comes to social capital, it's quite paradoxical. It's actually funny. Social capital accumulates only by spending. So the trick is in give and not take. The trick is in spend and not save. The best example of this paradox can be seen from nature. The importance of elements of nature like trees and water and river and sea increases more and more in the manner that they spend and give. So finance capital gets accumulated by saving, social capital gets accumulated by squandering. Number three, finance capital gives you only a financial return, whereas social capital gives you financial as well as non-financial returns or dividends. Let me explain that. And let me explain that in the context of a business scenario. Let's say you've got a team of many people in your organization, and you think that, hey, since they're in my team, I would like them to share the goodness or the advantages of the products and solutions and services that the company is offering to their extended network, to their social network, or to their social capital. But you find that doesn't happen. People are reticent. They don't want to share their social capital, social contacts with the company. Now, why does that happen? The reason is because you have invested finance capital in them. But if you had invested social capital in your team, then they would invest their social capital and open their networks and contacts for the company. But if you have only invested finance, you can't sit on a high horse and say, hey, I pay you salary and I give you bonus and so much more. It's incumbent upon you to go and share our products with your network. It's unfair. They won't do that. So therefore, finance capital yields you financial dividends, but if you deploy social capital in your team, it yields you financial and non-financial returns or dividends. Number 4 in not understanding or the misunderstanding of social capital vis-a-vis finance capital is to not understand the concept of inheritance. Now it's very clear, right? When we talk about inheritance, we say, hey, this guy inherited a lot of wealth. He's got a lot of capital which he can deploy. He's a second generation guy. But the same is true even for social capital. Actually, all of us inherit social capital. If not finance capital, we do inherit social capital. Let's say, for example, your parents, your father gave you the values of humility. You inherited that. That's a huge social capital. Your mother is a very loving person. The social capital of love is a huge capital for you to inherit. Or your grandparents were very kind to the society. They did a lot of good community work. This kindness and community work is an inheritance that you don't see, unfortunately. You always see your inheritance in the context of money and what you've got, but not in the context of the social capital that you've inherited. And that's when you lose your plot. Talking about inheritance brings me to the next point. You can end up in this world or come into this world without a single penny in your pocket, right? But there's no way any of us enters this world without social capital. Each one of us has, God sends us to this world with an opening balance of social capital. The concept of mutti bandh ke aaya bande. What is that? That mutti doesn't have currency notes oozing out of that or coming out of that. It's indicative of some values that you inherited. So all of us may come in this world maybe without money, but none of us comes here without some social capital. So it's always an opening balance. But what happens is as we grow, we kind of lose it because we see the importance of finance capital but lose the social capital importance and lose the plot. That's why it's important to contrast social capital with finance capital and see that finance capital is looked at in a very limited manner and you apply the same to social capital, and that's where you don't understand this concept or rather misunderstand this concept. But the moment you get aware or become aware of social capital, magically it starts accruing to you. It starts emerging within you. And no, you don't need to read big definitions of what is social capital or some theory or research paper or academic papers on social capital, not required. Quite honestly, there isn't a definition because it's such a amorphous thing. Social capital is made up of so many contexts and points, and each one of us has a different set of social capital. Each one of us. The moment you get aware of social capital, it starts emerging and you start acquiring social capital. Now, once you're aware of it, you can start doing day-to-day things to increase your social capital. I can share a few points. For example, engage without reason. And without reason is important. Now, it's very simple, but actually it's very surprising, right? When somebody calls you or you call somebody just for the heck of it, without any reason, people are actually taken aback. Hey, why did you call me? You often see people when they're facing some difficulty in their jobs or generally the boss is making life difficult, they start making calls and connecting and engaging with people. But moment things are settled and there's no reason for them to call, you can barely get through to them. So engage without reason, and without reason is very important, and that grows your social capital. I love that small narration with Prime Minister Modi made when it came to Mother of India's flight that crashed and a few people who perished. Now, all of them who perished were important people, and he realized that And rightly so, many people went to share their grief with the families. But there was this one guy who was a young reporter or journalist or something like that. I forget what he narrated. But the Prime Minister actually thought that, hey, nobody will go to that guy's and the grief of his family is as big. So he actually went and engaged with that family. And that's called engaging without reason. And that's how social capital goes. So engage without reason. Second is give without reason. Now, giving is not only just in the context of money. Of course, Indian businesses have seen giving, philanthropy, etc. for many years now. I mean, if you, let's say you walk into Haridwar today, you find a lot of dharmashalas built by hundreds of years back by these business houses from Chennai to Cochin to Rangoon to Karachi for the benefit of pilgrims who go there. But let's not talk about giving only in terms of money for no reason. You can even give your time. You can give a patient hearing. These are all things that you can give. But the important thing is give without reason. So engage without reason, give without reason. Third is help without reason. I don't know, for many of you, in Maharashtra we have one of the doyens, a multifaceted personality, author, filmmaker, writer, satirist in P.L. Deshpande. Pula Deshpande is what we call him. He's written a very nice small snippet or a story about a character called Narayan. This is a character which just comes up whenever there's a function at home, especially during weddings. In fact, he's so involved in the wedding that aside from the bride and bridegroom, this guy is the most famous guy during the wedding. He's involved in everything. He helps out with, arranging the horse to the Homa. You can't do without him, and his name is the first on everybody's lips. Now, all of us in our Indian families have seen these Narayans, right? Each family has a Narayan. Now, these guys thrive on social capital. They help without reason. And can you imagine the capital that they accrue? Because through the year, if they need anything, they just walk in. They're invited to all important functions. Whenever they need anything, it's given to them. So, engage without reason, give without reason, and help without reason. This increases your social capital. Social capital can also be looked at in the context of institutions or enterprise, right? But then it is normally in the context of money and CSR, etc. Not really the way you look at social capital of an individual. But even then it matters. If a company or an enterprise has a lot of social capital, it allows them to cushion a lot of bad things. Few years back, there was an example, in fact, a very respectable group in which there was a managing director of a group company who was, kind of caught in some misdemeanor to do with some stock market or real estate or something like that, and he was sent to the jail. But because the company was so respected, and had so much social capital, it was able to accommodate this vagary, and even the stock market, the stock did not, kind of see too much fluctuation. The individual suffered, but not the company. There's another story in which the managing director in a similar fashion was caught and was sent to the jail, but since the company did not have social capital, the whole enterprise collapsed behind him. Now, that's the importance of social capital even at an institutional level. But leave that aside, and I'm not taking names because that would not be proper, but I'm sure most of you understand. So, in today's context, the importance of social capital cannot be misunderstood. Let's summarize it. To understand social capital, you need to contrast that with finance capital to remove that misunderstanding. Finance capital is unidimensional, social capital is multidimensional. Finance capital grows and accumulates when you save. Social capital grows and accumulates when you spend. Finance capital returns you only financial dividends. Social capital returns you financial as well as non-financial dividends. You can count inheritance of yours when it comes to finance capital in terms of the money that you inherit. But don't forget that each one of us inherits social capital from our families, from our parents, from our friends. The dimensions are different. And finally, each one of us is born on this earth with some opening balance of social capital. We may not come here with any financial capital in our pockets, but all of us come here with some amount of social capital. Once you understand this concept of social capital, you start deploying it in a most purest form. You engage with people without reason, most important. Help people without reason and give people without reason. I hope you found this video enjoyable. Thank you for sharing, subscribing, and I wish all of you generate a whole amount of social capital that you can keep sharing and grow it and accumulate it even more and become great leaders. Till we meet again, thank you. Bye for now.